How are you supposed to sell something to somebody who doesn't want to buy something?
Get to know them, get to know their operational model, and when is the compelling event? You know, are they finally, I mean, we're down to the point with Avaya where it's the real loyal bedrock crew, but is there the upgrade? Is there that moment in time when there is that compelling event to move, which I forgot to mention in my Microsoft presentation? You know, you got to be close enough to them that when that happens, you are there. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, I think I always get confused by word acronyms like CCaaS, CCaaS.
That's a good point to start.
I get very confused what we're talking about. And I think what we're really talking about is improving customer experience and customer in a lot of cases. And there's a formal CCaaS market, no question, which is going through a transfer at some rate. But the rest of it is kind of a Venn diagram. So we heard about Anywhere 365 earlier. I haven't been looking at that business for various reasons. And they're very focused on the Microsoft area. And they're actually saying there's a new kind of informal market emerging where Microsoft, maybe companies who haven't got formal contact centers, have deployed Teams, deployed virtual workforce, and now they've got a new requirement. Some of it's internal dialogue, actually, as well as customer dialogue. So there is some new dynamics to this market where things are emerging. The other thing, which might be a UK thing, and everybody won't, so I apologise, but I was doing some work on a thing called the inbound market, which I thought had died about 10 years ago. The inbound market was numbers, which we then pointed at old PBXs, and you know, that market is, well, we're getting a big number in the UK, it's still 100 million, and it's not moving very much at all, because people don't want to, they want to improve, they want to focus on that customer experience. So if they've got routing and numbers, and you know, so it's broader. I think I know quite a lot of people in the audience. If you all think you're going to go after the large contact center market, I think you're going to struggle, because you probably haven't got the skills, the technology, and some of the capabilities. But the bigger opportunity for you is in the broader, how do I address customer experience? How do I do it with analytics? How do I do informal contact centers? What happened with the Microsoft dynamic? How is that changing the world? I think that there is definitely, I agree completely with my esteemed colleagues about the CCaaS market and itself. It's growing and it's changing and it takes time. I all agree with that. But I think the bigger opportunity for some of the people in this room is how do we take advantage of that stat that I showed, that when people are thinking about business communications platforms, the first thing they're thinking about is how do I improve customer experience. So.
Blair, is the UCaaS and CCaaS combo play something real? Because there's a lot of mixed messaging out there.
Well, Dave, you and I are both Seinfeld fans, so I will say it is real and it's spectacular. So yes, UCaaS and CCaaS together is definitely a real thing, and it's something I've been talking about. I say this all the time, but I actually started talking about it since the late 90s, before there was such a thing as UCaaS. But there are so many benefits that companies can get from the integration. But so right now it's being driven and pushed more from the vendor side. You know, we're really hard pressed to see a UCaaS vendor that doesn't have either its own CCaaS platform or an integration like what RingCentral is doing with NICE. But you know, pretty much all the UCaaS vendors have some sort of CCaaS offering that they're providing to customers, and so it benefits them. You know, obviously they have more to sell, but it also does benefit the customer. You know, single vendor, single bills, single administration, and then as we heard, you know, several people talking about, Colby talked about it just before. You know, the whole idea of if a contact center agent is dealing with a customer and maybe there's something that they don't know how to answer, they don't have all the information. So being able to see the presence of a subject matter expert somewhere else in the organization, not in the contact center, so they see their presence and availability, send a quick chat to get the information. Or the next step, what we're starting to see very slowly, is what I call the collaborative contact center, and Colby addressed this also, using some of the collaborative capabilities in the UC system to be able to, you know, open a workspace together, have a video collaboration together, you know, bring in the subject matter expert, the customer, and the agent, and really be able to collaborate together with video, with screen sharing, with document sharing, to really solve the customer's problem. So we're at very early stages of that kind of thing, but it's going to be happening more and more. So I'd say the integration of UCaaS and CCaaS is very much real.
Well, I said it's a confusing topic, and one of the data points that conflicts with what you're saying is the recent Gartner Magic Quadrant put every vendor that has a combo play, UC and CC, into the niche quadrant, every single one. And so Art, putting you on the spot since you are no longer Forrester, but you.
And no longer Gartner.
But you published the last Forrester Wave, and then so when I tell you that Gartner put every one of it put Cisco 8x8, who was the combo? I don't remember the one. They put them all in niche category. Did that surprise you? I mean, what were your thoughts on that?
So, it's first and foremost, I want to say that what does the customer want at that time? Okay. I mean, if you want to pull the thread back, you got to be ready with a solution. Both of these are attractive markets, and the sell it all on one platform. If you go back to the days when we had a lot of standalone ACDs, old term folks, and then the PBX vendors stepped up to the plate, and then we eliminated a lot of the standalone ACDs. So, okay, buy from the same outfit. Okay. As far as the placement on the quadrant, those solutions were more of the let's sell something that's part of the UCCC platform. It's a good enough 25 seat, 50 seat, 100 seat that you can sell all from one. And then when you get to the large enterprises that want all the dials and levers and bells and whistles, et cetera, the evaluative tools like a Wave or a Magic Quadrant is by its nature going to drive it up to the larger scale, more feature rich, and probably the ones that a smaller contact center operation won't use or want. So you're right, it's a confusing question because there is this dynamic of crossover, but what does the customer want at that point in time? What's their size and scale? And is the compelling event for both happening at that time?
So you're saying size matters. And so I want to get Elka and Matt to chime in on this. Matt was talking earlier about different focus with small business, and Elka started off the conversation saying that she sees a contact center as a logical add-on for UC. So Elka, why don't you address that? Why do you see, where's the combo power?
So obviously, we're talking about communications, internal, external. We're talking about connecting with different parties, and as we look at the total kind of communications and collaboration stack that an organization needs, obviously it makes a lot of sense to consolidate vendor relationships, to also integrate the capabilities internally for operational, administrative, and other efficiencies. And certainly it has a significant potential to improve the user experience by connecting, let's say, contact center agents with knowledge workers and others within the organization, via chat rooms, if you have messaging, connecting them with video and whatnot. So there is a significant potential to deliver benefits to the customer, but also from kind of a enabling technology point of view. If you're already in the UCaaS space, you're most likely using a platform that has certain contact center capabilities. You're reselling either Cisco or RingCentral or somebody else that has some contact center functionality included. Or you're working with a vendor that can enable some of these integrations for you. So that's another kind of driver. But from a platform point of view, you gotta look at this as an opportunity to land and expand. If you walk into a customer organization, you can lead with either one. You can lead with UCaaS or with CCaaS, and eventually look for opportunities to expand within the customer organization. Did I answer your question, Dave?
And I think it's set up for Matt, because Matt was earlier speaking about small businesses a little different than enterprise. Matt, do you find it's better to lead with CCaaS or UCaaS, or any advice on that?
I probably wouldn't use the terminology if I was talking to a customer, but I wouldn't necessarily lead with UCaaS and CCaaS. I'd look at, we're talking about a lot of companies leading with and trying to improve the outcomes for the sort of company, and that might be, I want to improve collaboration, I want to include customer service, I want to do those sorts of things. But I think what's really interesting about the combo there's two things here. Let's be honest, there's a portfolio element. So some customers are going to come to you and they're going to want to see that your portfolio fulfills what they think they want. You know, they're going to tick the box and say, I want an omnichannel contact center with it. But when it comes to the reality of what they buy, I think sometimes that's a little bit different. So I think there's an element for a service provider of having a portfolio fulfilled. The other point I think is just about value. So we've seen for years customers apply value when they can see that they're improving a top line thing like customer experience, sales. So that's why there's so much value associated with the CCaaS market, why everybody's going after it. But we've also seen that value in other areas. We've seen it in analytics. We've seen it in anywhere where we're kind of improving that experience. So I think it has to be a combo there. I mean, if you're going to a customer and he says, I want to improve, when we call it, it's a defined CCaaS platform, but you have to be able to fulfill that requirement. So I think I can't understand why anybody wouldn't see there's a benefit in the combination. It seems completely illogical to say, because this company has decided to have a platform that does both, they should be a niche provider. I mean, to me, if that's really the reason that Gartner did that, they must be smoking something, right? Just doesn't make any sense. So I can't believe that was their rationale. We're not here to defend themselves. They seem quite sensible chaps when I met them. So I can't believe it's that. But there is a lot of opportunity in improving customer experience, and therefore you're going to have, in certain companies, small companies, it's going to be one thing. In large companies, it's going to be CCaaS and UCaaS deployment. It's going to be different things. But yeah, I can't believe that is the right niche.
So we've talked a lot about UC and CC, but there's other bundles. Their CRM is moving into it. Cisco's got contact center in their company. They might have a network as a bundle or something like that. So what is a logical bundle? Anyone? Art?
So there's a ton of things that surround the core of contact center. We've got the whole call it workforce optimization or workforce whatever. So quality monitoring, call recording, workforce management. These things kick in as you scale when people want to buy standalone solutions for that. But there's a lot of bundling. I've been adamant that a lot of CCaaS vendors acquire or develop their own workforce optimization capabilities. So there's bundling there. You look at the front end of the contact center, we've got the whole AI, chatbot, you name it kind of thing. Look, in the ACD world, many of the leading call center vendors had IVR. So I would get from Avaya the call center, and I would get from Avaya the IVR. So you've got all of these surround and bundling capabilities, not just the UC part of it that kind of confuses us, but there are the classic separate ecosystem, buy and sell together, or the vendor own it and actually sell it as part of the portfolio. What was it, nice? Blair, what was that term that Alon came up with?
It'll hit me in a minute.
Yeah, sort of suite, but also.
Like it was a suite and a bundle combined.
Yeah, so, all of that stuff that's all needed. Now, granted. Suite form, yeah.
Yeah, platform and suite.
Now, of course, we could throw out the bundling because Salesforce has now been putting their toe in the water with their partnership with Amazon and then trying to partner with others. Hey, buy all your contact center from Salesforce because we own the desktop. So there's tons of ways that you can differentiate value and go with the suite or go with other components and deliver a CX story, as you saw Jordan yesterday. What is the uptick in terms of the investment and valuations, my friends, is the focus on CX.
So Art pretty much said everything I was going to say, but there's one thing that we're starting to see come into the CX mix is customer data platforms. And Twilio acquired Segment for that reason, and we're starting to see some of the other contact center players do more as far as customer data platforms, and not so many data warehouses, but really a place to have all that customer information. So CRM has been around for a long time, and that does a lot. But we're expanding now into these data platforms that bring in information from different places. So from CRM, but also other areas. And we're also seeing a crossover with sales and marketing. So Salesforce has all their sales, marketing, contact center. Twilio, again, with on their customer data platform, they're expanding into marketing and sales. So we're seeing contact center, so customer service is expanding, and contact center is expanding beyond customer service to sales and marketing and all those other areas. So that might be something else to think about, going beyond customer service to sales, marketing, and other things that are coming together.
I think the chatbot point is very interesting. We've seen in Europe a couple of the big players buy chatbot companies. So a couple of the SME focused, so Destiny, who are here somehow, I don't know where the guys are, but they bought a chatbot company and almost building out of that. A company called Enreach bought a chatbot company and have built some of their, sort of coming in from that angle and building on top of that towards more of a formal CCaaS kind of offer. So I think there's different angles that people are potentially coming at with this. Obviously, big CCaaS vendors are coming from one angle, but some of the service providers are taking slightly different routes, I think.
Well, you've introduced a new word, building. So we've been talking about bundling. Let's talk about building. There's Twilio, Amazon, a number of like Vonage. A number of the companies here are saying, forget Vonage is saying both, but forget buying our CCaaS. Just build your own CCaaS. Any thoughts on that?
I'll go back to my chart earlier today. Buy what you can, build what you must. So, and Kevin, yesterday in your CPaaS panel, don't sell CPaaS. Sell a solution, okay? So quite frankly, I've never really been a fan of Twilio Flex because every time you turn around, you got to build something. A contact center manager would rather buy, in my opinion, okay? But that said, you've always got some wonderful opportunities in contact center, and this is a more general statement, that UCaaS is tough because the business case is the infamous, let's make employees more productive, the 5 minutes per day we save, and the CFO never buys the business case. Contact center, you're always trying to rob the bank of agent salaries. We'll cut handle time, we'll cut agent seats, that's a hard dollar business case, because you prompted me on that, Matt, by talking about chatbots. So we're going to throw something else on the front end, and we're going to contain customers. I love that metric. It's like, I hate it. And automate.
Contain and deflect.
Well, contain and deflect, but it's true that customers want quicker answers if they're right. And then we get launched over to the agent who has to handle the dissatisfaction because the chatbot was getting it wrong. But you've got much more discrete and hard dollar business cases here to create solutions, to bundle, to really target it to that operational model of the contact center, and that's where you need the specialist.
So for the first time in my life, I think we'll disagree with Art.
You never said that.
That's more with Dave that I disagree.
I disagree with you all the time, usually not Art. But, so as far as Twilio and AWS, there are certain use cases and businesses and companies that need that specialization. They need, a special integration with a CRM or a certain capability that, the off-the-shelf, well, the typical CCaaS providers don't do. So when I talk to AWS or Twilio customers, I always ask, why? Because as Art said, it is a lot harder to build than buy, but they always have specific requirements. So, Maricopa County, many of us have heard of them in the news recently. They needed to be able to reach out to their constituents or their customers, a bit more, and make it easier for them to interact with the county. So they added a natural language understanding capability from Twilio, and so they added on certain capabilities from Twilio to what they already had, and they added these capabilities. So now instead of saying, when a customer calls in, they don't hear, our menu. Please listen closely because our menu items have changed. Instead, it's, hi, how can I help you? You've reached Maricopa County, how can we help you? And the customers or constituents can have a much more natural type of interaction with them. And that was a specific use case that the county felt that there weren't really any good situations out there that met their needs. And by working with Twilio and a third-party partner who put it together for them, so they didn't have the developers, so they were able to work with a third party who did help them put this all together. And there were lots more use cases, but I mean, in general, I would say it's easier to buy than build. but there are certain situations where, it does make sense.
Okay, when we started off, Matt made an interesting point that I'm not sure what a CCAS is. And we talked a little bit about the bundle, we talked a little bit about, workforce engagement and UC. What about where the contact center is? Do any of you have thoughts about how does that change the business if the contact center is at home, agents are at home, or if they're in a traditional contact center?
So I had an interesting conversation with some government consultants when I was presenting at a conference last year. And they said that they were having a really hard time because the government agencies insisted on having the agents working in the office, for regulations and security and whatever. So they were having a really hard time hiring and retaining agents because the agents all wanted to go to companies where they had the flexibility and were able to work from home. So it's really changing the whole dynamic of who you can hire, where you can hire. So if organizations don't provide that work from home flexibility, they're really at a disadvantage and having a hard time. And with CCAS, we have the tools, we have the technology to make it easy for, well, not easy, but easier for agents to work from anywhere. And as a customer, whenever I call a contact center, I always say, so are you, or there are times where, I hear kids in the background or something, it's like, so you're working from home, how's that going for you? Like, oh, I love it, and I can take care of my kid, or be home for my kid when they get home from school. So the agents really, really want that. So I don't think it's gonna be a choice from the contact center organizations anymore. It's really going to be, the agents want this, and they can be more productive and more effective, and you can hire agents from anywhere. So I don't think the genie's going back in the bottle on that one.
Yeah, Dave, I did a study a while ago commissioned by Avaya, okay, and it was surveying customers. This was like 20,000 data points across like 15 countries around the globe, a global study of what has been their experience, what channels do they use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And some interesting findings. One was that the grumpiest people were Brits. And so that was an interesting finding. And there was an interesting finding that in the LATAM region, there was more of an affinity to be on mobile devices and to use things like chat and mobile phones. But what was the viewpoint of the customers about the agents? This is very interesting. And, it's perception. You're asking them a question, how the heck do they know where the agent was? But if you ask them a question, if they felt that the agent worked for another company, like an outsourcer, if any of you are outsourcers, I'm sorry, but that was a negative. If they sensed that the agent was working at home, that was a positive. So I think the agents anywhere is a question for any organization, and where you source that workforce. And to a certain extent with CCAS, it's gotten easier to just say the agents can be anywhere. Although I did a study for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont, and yes, they wanted to support work from home, but they couldn't for everybody because a number of their folks lived way out on the farm, and there was only twisted pair copper, and it was awful, even though the contact center manager's husband was the regional director for Verizon, okay? So, it's how you source your workforce and how they do the job to serve customers, and I absolutely believe CCAS can make it a bit easier to do that.
And it also helps with the new gig economy, which is something we're starting to see. Instead of agents, being in the office, 8 to 5 or whatever, people are doing, 4 hours here, 4 hours there, and it'll work with, their school schedule, their, other responsibilities. So we're starting to see that a lot more. So again, being able to work from home and have CCAS makes that possible.
I'm glad to hear what you said, because I make it a habit when I talk to a contact center agent to ask them where they are. And increasingly, they're almost always at home.
And they enjoy it.
And enjoy it. So my question to the group here is, how does that change the sales motion? What is the value prop that, besides remote agent, we've been employed for years. So besides the fact that we can actually make the phone work remotely, how does it change the conversation to have remote agents, distributed and remote agents.
They have to move to the cloud. So I mean, you can do remote agents on-prem, but it's much, much harder. So it really opens up the opportunity to have the conversation about moving to the cloud and, having that distributed workforce. So I think it's just another avenue to creating more sales.
V-Data is not only about making the phone work, because, you gotta have a quality connection, but with what you are doing for that customer, do you give them all the tools necessary to effectively grow and manage that agent workforce that's providing the customer experience? Now, the downside on that is that with the way the technologies are right now, I think it was Teleperformance did this, so I'm calling out Teleperformance, sorry, but you get some concerns. What do we do about that remote workspace? A lot of contact centers have a clean desk policy. Nothing on the agent desk, no sticky notes, no copying down of credit card numbers, no download, no workstations that have a USB connection where you can download the entire customer database. So what do you do as a managed service provider to provide the kit for that work from home? But what Teleperformance started doing was they were turning on the camera. They were watching, and so you had supervisors who used to walking the floor now wanted to literally walk the home. And boy, did that not go over well. But there is this need to make effective use, provide a good employee experience, but you've got to be able to explain whatever kit you have in your solution effectively provides a secure, remote solution for those agents to use.
And Mike Tesler on the first day, was that only yesterday?
Yeah.
So he talked about a company called Journey. And that's one thing that they're specializing in is security and ensuring that the customer information is safe and secure. And it's especially important with remote agents and Journeys. They had some really interesting stories about some of the stuff that goes on in these agents' homes and how they can really help ensure a more compliant, secure situation. So again, there are these third-party applications and things that you can add to the portfolio to help your customers make sure that they're getting the right solution for their needs.
And does anyone have any questions for our expert panel?
So what is omnichannel, and when will it be possible for a consumer to just message the contact center and just say, hey, this is my question, and they give me the definitive answer, or just schedule a time where you can get a call and get it all answered in 10 minutes?
So basically 2 questions in there. What the hell is omnichannel? And when do interactions not start with voice?
Omnichannel is beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. We've flogged this term for quite a long period of time now, and then we add another fancy channel like, oh, now we're all doing WhatsApp, okay? So in the studies, the last studies that I did in terms of contact centers, voice, we've got some sort of messaging type of capability. Maybe we're doing some of the WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and then email, and then add some more after that. But to message a contact center, been around since a very long time. And there's a number of times, quite frankly, that those interactions do start out in the messaging media. And sometimes that has to, oh my gosh, escalate to voice. So it's the seamlessness with which you can weave all those channels. You can weave the availability of your workforce according to the rules that you want to do in terms of staffing. And again, it's a term we've flogged for a long time to many people's advantage.
But you left out the word context, because the important thing is when.
I left it for you.
Oh, thank you. When an interaction goes from one channel to another, so it might start in messaging, and then it has to escalate to voice. You don't want the customer to have to repeat their whole, here's what I was asking for, here's what, the chatbot told me or whatever. So presenting the context and the whole interaction history along with the transfer of the interaction. That's what makes it omni-channel as opposed to multi-channel really. Because, we've had multi-channel for ages, but it's always been discrete. With omni-channel, it's being able to have that seamless conversion or whatever, or escalation from one channel to another.
So I want you to go a little bit on omni-channel. This is a largely UCaaS-oriented audience. They don't sell WhatsApp. How do they sell omni-channel?
They sell the UCaaS solution of their own and connect to WhatsApp. It's that simple, David. Because you don't need to sell the consumer end of the connection. Period, full stop, end of story. Okay, you need to serve the customer wants to connect to their customers over WhatsApp, but you sell a solution that on the agent side connects to WhatsApp.
All right, I think we're over time. I'm going to add one more for questions. One more.
We didn't talk much about the profitability contact center, right? I mean, just your thoughts on it. Here you have a product that instead of $20 a seat, you get $75 a seat. Instead of churn at maybe 1.1, you have churn at like 0.7.
Yeah, so two factors in profitability. One is annual recurring revenue, and the other one is churn. That's got people pretty excited, and that's a good point, Art. We haven't really talked about that. So, Matt, you got thoughts on the...
Yeah, I mean, this is why kind of when Anywhere 365 comes to market, apparently it is, I didn't say that, somebody said it earlier, there is a lot of interest and a different valuation in that CIM than in, unfortunately, all the UCaaS guys comes to market. But but there is value. So at the top end, we look at CCaaS having this value and at UCaaS having this value. There's a lot in between in terms of the margin you can generate. I mean, so our friends from the Kicks here who did analytics and informal contact center, they got much more, a very good valuation, I can assure you, on that business, because it was addressing that customer experience challenge. So I think you've got to really think about how you position your business in that. You don't have to be UCaaS and CCaaS and that gets this valuation and that gets this valuation. You've got to think about there's a continuum of services you can offer and where you position yourself in that mix, I think. But it's there's always been a perception of value and margin at a CCaaS provider compared with
Just a couple of kind of sentences around Clark's question. So it is definitely an opportunity to increase the ARPU, increase your share of the customer's wallet. So it is also a way to elevate the conversation with the customer organization. I believe we continue to have conversations around PBX replacement that are very operational, very much on, this is how you can make calls, less at a lower cost, or maybe now we've started talking about enhancing collaboration internally. But it is when you start talking to the customer organization about how you're going to make them more money, because they will connect with customers more easily, or how you're going to help them retain customers and still make more money, then it's a completely different kind of circle of decision makers. You're expanding that circle basically and having a deeper conversation about business goals and not so much, IT operational goals. So I think it's one of those things that the UCaaS community just has to do at all cost, very much.
I just want to add one thing. If you think about the average cost per seat of UCaaS, and then you think about the average cost per seat or per agent on the CCaaS side, you can get a lot more money on the CCaaS side. And to Art's point about, adding in, the workforce optimization and all those other things, there's so much you can add to it, and it can be so much more lucrative than just selling UCaaS.
Yeah.
But I am going to be religious about this one point, and it's throughout the whole years I've been doing call center all the way back to AT&T, where we kept fighting to keep this special sales force that was selling call center. And that's, down to maybe the 25-seater. You don't access the better margins without investing in specialists who can match what you do to the operational model of that contact center. You don't get there. So it's not this great valuation, let's go get it, let's sign up, let's sell. You need that specialization to tap those margins. Sorry to be relentless on that one.
It'd be interesting on that point. Do you believe that how easy is it for a UCAS guy to start selling into I mean, is there any examples around here of the UCAS, evening of UCAS SMB guys? We can argue, I suppose, about it, but
I absolutely. So in my career, I've seen many times from the supply side, large vendors wanting to go small, so then they get more customers. And small vendors wanting to go large, ooh, there's more seats up there.
Yeah.
And so I've seen many pioneers along the road with arrows in their back trying to do that. There's this dynamic, the way you commented on it, size matters. I think for folks that are selling UCAS, and you've got a bundled, straightforward, 25-seater, 50-seater, crawl, walk, run, okay? So as you say, I do want to go up market, I want more seats, I'm seeing some opportunities coming from my region or territory, then grow that. And you know, at the end of the day, go hire some people and put them within your staff to be able to pull that off. But your whole support model has to then kind of grow to do that too. But I'm into the UCAS, crawl, walk, run, be really careful because the dynamics change when you try and go actually either up or down.
Your sales revenue is important to us, please hold.
Okay.
Okay, with that, thank you very much to our panelists. I think we're out of time, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, thank you.